Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Creative Confessions, where we talk about all things Artist Alley, manufacturing products as an artist, and small business advice. I'm your host, Macy, and I'm the artist and designer behind Mualcaina, a small business focused on kawaii designs. As you progress into your Artist Alley journey, you may get to a point where you get into more than one con on the same weekend. You can either decline one of them or do both by sending over a proxy. I'm excited to welcome our guest who has been vending all across the country in Artist Alley as a print artist and experience in working with multiple proxies. Without further ado, I'm excited to welcome Gerry, better known as GerryDraws.
Hi Macy, thank you so much for having me. Yeah, of course. I'm very excited. Like I've been watching it since episode one and I was like, when am I gonna get
Yeah, I was already like I already had you on the list.
I'm so happy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I'd love to start out if you could share a little bit about you and how you started Gerry Draws.
Yeah, of course. Just for all the viewers, I just want to let you know. So like Macy said, my name is Gary and I'm the owner of GerryDraws and I specializes in making fun, energetic, and cute prints and like merchandise and stuff. I want to consider myself pretty new to the con scene. So the first time that I actually vended, it was actually December 2021. And I want to say that it's like pretty new just because like a lot of my friends or like the people that I talk to said that they usually like, oh, like I've been doing this for like, since like 2019, 2017, basically like pre-COVID. I want to consider myself a little bit newer just because I started doing it like after COVID, you know what I mean? But a lot of people usually are like, oh yeah, like since I was teen and yeah, I started December 2021 and I had one event there. And then that was the first time that I was selling. Before that, I was actually working as a graphic designer for a wine publication. Before doing Artist Alley, I was doing a lot of like design works for different companies, and most of them are publications.
Well, so I'm wondering, like, do you do Gerry Draws like full time right now?
Yes, actually. I started selling at 2020, the end of 2021. The first 9 months of 2023, I decided like, oh, I think I want to make this into like a full-time thing. So my first full year of doing this full-time was actually last year, 2023.
Usually the first year feels the longest in a way, and then afterwards, especially because you're traveling, it's like, oh, it's already been a year. But since you used to have like a full-time role working with wine companies, what made you realize you wanted to do art full-time?
I guess what made me want to do art full-time is that like, it's not like a particular moment while I was working there, but I think growing up, I've always been the art kid. I mean, I feel like a lot of us are.
Yeah.
Even my parents and everyone already knew that I was the art kid. Like, so even since I was in high school, like I knew that I was either gonna be a like a businessman or an artist. So I actually went to school for illustration because, yeah, again, like I want to be an artist. And then after I graduated, just so everyone knows, I actually live in Brooklyn, like New York. I moved here right after college because I was trying to pursue a career as a freelance illustrator. Whenever you see like the New Yorker or like you see like a magazine and then you see like what they call like illustrations on those magazines,
Yeah.
those are called editorial illustrations. And that's what I wanted to do when I moved here, which is I wanted to be an editorial illustrator. And because New York is the hub for the publication and advertising, I I figured that this is a good place for me to move to and try to like start my career. But along the way, I realized that like a few problems with that. Number one, the pay is actually not as great for those in the industry. Even the people that can make it their full-time job, it takes years and years to get to that point. And then number two, it is extremely competitive. You can probably get like one or two gigs a month when you're first starting out. You would probably be getting paid like a few $100 to like maybe like upward to like a few Ks depending on like what the project is. But again, as like a newbie, you would probably usually end up getting the lower end. I think what made me realize that like I wanted to like do this, like I've taken like different jobs and like work for different people, and then I just didn't feel fulfilled. I actually went to Anime NYC in November of 2021, and then I went there, and then I think that's like my first con, and something just kind of like it kind of just like opened my eye, And I was like, oh wow, like wait, like this is so cool. Like I was like, I think I can do this too. And then that's why like a month later I tried like jumped in and like just started doing it.
Oh my God. Wait, that's so cool. Talking about Artist Alley, you said that you started December 2021 till now. How many cons have you done since you first started?
This is kind of funny because again, like I said, like I just started doing this full time last year, but I told myself that I wasn't gonna go crazy on the first year because like when you talk to a lot of people like who do Artist Alley, they say they're like, oh yeah, like I usually like ramp up. You usually do like your local ones, and after that you build up to the bigger ones.
Yeah.
I I did not do that. My first con ever, like the one in December, like it was actually like out of state. So that was my first one ever. Like I had to prepare in 2 weeks. And yeah, I actually did, if I'm not mistaken, 43 cons
Oh my
last year.
God.
Yeah, 43 cons. Like I was like,
Dang.
oh, I need to chill. Yeah, I was like, I need to chill. I think I was a little bit too eager and I was just like, oh, let me just apply. Let me just apply. And then I was like, oh my God, how did I end up with 43 cons? And I also only found out about that number once the year end. You know what I mean? So like I didn't even realize how much I did until I had to, oh yeah, let me see like how many cons I did this year. I was like, oh my God, 43. I was
Yeah, no,
like,
you do so many. Like sometimes when I see you on Instagram and you're like at three different cons and I'm like, what the fuck, Gary? It's like so you did 43 since December 2021. Do you remember how many you did in 2023?
43 is actually just 2023. So like
Oh my
that
God.
December, I didn't even, yeah.
I That's
Yeah.
crazy.
2022. So the first 9 months, I was still like, I still had a full-time job. So obviously I wasn't doing as much. I think in those 9 months, I think I did 5 or 6. So
Okay.
very reasonable
Such a
numbers.
big
Yeah.
difference, Gary.
Yeah. It was, I think if I'm not, yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, 2022, I think I did like probably just 10 cons. And again, like the majority of it is like the first 9 months, like I only did like 6. So probably like since September till December is like 4. And I still feel like that's very normal,
Yeah.
yeah.
Versus 43. But then I feel like since you
43.
did bring up that you did a lot of them, or I'm assuming you did a lot of them like out of state, but that's also because since you're from New York, there's not a lot of
Mhm.
like New York local cons, especially if it's specific to
Yeah.
anime, like in New York, besides ANYC.
I personally feel like there's barely any shows that, like you said, like geared towards anime. So I did 3 cons here, but I think only one of them is geared towards like anime, which is Anime NYC. Usually, whenever we have shows here, it's either like more crafts or comics. And the thing is, like when I say comic, a lot of it is not like New York Comic Con where it's like it's still like encompassing. It's usually like your very like geeky, nerdy comic ones. So like very comic heavy,
Mhm.
and animes usually do not do well at all. Or the other one is that we have a lot of like craft fairs and stuff. It's usually a lot of original stuff. So like not even like anime or comic.
I'm honestly surprised because I would think, especially with New York, there's a lot of people who like anime, and I'm surprised there aren't a lot of conventions that are geared towards that, even if it's a smaller convention. Or is it just because rent might be expensive for like a con center?
That might be the case. I'm actually wondering about that too. Because like let's say like in California where you are, or like Texas and Florida, right? There's so many cons like throughout the year, like even just like, and the thing is like I feel like a lot of these cons don't even have to be in like Brooklyn. It could be like if that's the case, I feel like you could still have it like a little bit more up or out, and then people can still like reach it. I have a feeling it might be maybe the logistics and like the New York, like again like the permits and everything in New York City itself might be incredibly difficult, which I wouldn't be surprised at. One other thing that's kind of hard is because in New York there's so many events going on. So if you don't have enough money for like marketing, your event would just flop. And I feel like that
Mm,
deters a lot of new event organizers from like doing it.
that makes sense because I think ANYC's like actual not sponsored, but isn't Crunchyroll basically funding it, or are they like separate?
I'm actually not too sure, but I do know that Anime NYC is run by Left Field Media, which they've
Mm.
also done like different cons. So like what I'm saying is like they're not. like a one-off small con, but they are being held by like the people who organize it. They also organize different conventions, so it's not like this is their one and only one, but they have experience in doing one. So I'm pretty sure because they've also done like a lot of different cons, they also have fundings.
I feel like that's a good opportunity for what is it, like Anime Impulse and like Nerdbot Media who does like Anime Pasadena. I feel like if they want to expand, they're gonna have to try the East Coast at this point. So out of all of the 43 plus like 9 or so conventions, like which one would you say was your most successful?
I actually wanted to say Otakon.
Oh,
So
okay.
Otakon, yeah, Otakon for people who are not aware is they're being held in Washington DC. So there's a few reasons why I like that. And also by the way, congratulations on getting in because I
Thank
did
you. I'm
not get in
so
this year.
excited. I cried.
Yeah, it's a really good con. But I think what takes the cake for me is that like it was a few different things. Otakon tends to happen at like the end of July, right? And most of the big cons, so like AX, Fanny and whatever, they all started usually at the beginning of summer throughout the summer. Otakon is kind of like at the end of July and everything. So it's like when everything is already like slowing down. So I think that's number one. Number two is like because it's in DC, it's very accessible for me. All I have to do was take the train, and I love taking the train because I just have to take the Amtrak. It's like a 3 hour ride, and then it was like, oh, we're here. I think it's a 5 minute car ride from the station to the convention center, so it's
Oh,
very very
wow.
convenient. I think Otakon was my best one, is because last year I got this booth called the Unlimited booth. For the viewers who are not aware, Otakon has a few different table options. They have the standard table, which I think you applied for, right?
Yes.
You have to have 50-50 fan art and original, which my work comprised of like 99% fan art. So I do not qualify for that. For people like me, they have this thing called unlimited tables. So unlimited tables is basically just like a bigger space, like more like premium table where they don't have that limitations. So you have a bigger booth and you can also just sell all fan art. But the downside for that one is that instead of the lottery one, you have to do it first come first serve. So this year I wasn't lucky enough to get a table because the competition is really tough. But last year when I got it, I think it was really good because number one, I was debuting my bigger pieces, so like I actually have the space to hang my banners because that was the first time where I was like trying that out. And then the second one, the placement last year, they put the unlimited ones at the front row, so when you come in, the first thing you see would be the unlimited tables. And then after that, Artist Alley is gonna be at the back. Yeah, I think that helps a lot with sales. And then I think number three, I think the space is so huge that people are not cramped. Even when you have like 15 people at your table, which I did at some point, like it wasn't crowded because like there was just so much space to breathe. So people actually have time to look. People weren't pressure. Usually at a con, like I usually like to be a little more proactive and like talk to people and everything. But I think it's because it's at the end of like the con season. I was kind of burnt out at that point. So it was kind of chill because I was just talking to my friend, but people would come up to me. We would talk for a little bit and then they already know what they wanted. So there wasn't a lot of things that I have to do from my end. I was just chilling with my friend. People come and like, yeah. You know how usually at like cons you would have rush hour and then it would be dead. This one, no, like it's a very stable from opening to closing. We weren't rushed. We were just like, hey, like I need this. Like I'm like, cool. But like it would not stop from morning till night. I think the takeaway from that one was that like I remember going home when I had to go home from Otakon. It was the first con where I actually felt like I was going on vacation because I did not feel stressed and I actually felt refreshed.
Oh,
And I was like, oh yeah,
wow.
and yeah, and that's why I would consider it like my best one because it was very low stress because it was local. The vibe was really really good. There was not a lot of work that I had to do on my end, and it was just like overall a very very positive experience. So I am so happy that you get to experience that this
Thank
year.
you. I'm excited. I heard really good things about Otakon, and I like that you mentioned that it's very consistent with sales because
Mm,
as much as obviously like I love AX, but it can get very stressful when there's like a really long rush and then I wouldn't say it's like dead, but it's just rush and then
yeah,
it's
slow, like
calm.
slower. Because I mean, we're human beings, right? So like when it's like rush hour, we kind of get like this adrenaline rush,
Hmm.
and then after that, when it slowed down, that kind of went away, and it made you feel like more tired. But then after that, when there's another rush, your stress level kind of goes like up and down the entire day.
Yeah.
But when it's stable, you can kind of regulate yourself. So that's why I didn't feel tired. It's like the same energy, the same amount like people, and like yeah, and you're like they know what they want. So you're just like kind of stable the entire day. And you also don't people don't overstay their welcome, which I think is like pretty good too.
Yeah. We can talk about that in another one.
Yeah, and also, I just want to let you know, I think this year's layout is better because I think they moved the unlimited one to the back, so people are actually gonna go into the artist alley first. So I think they're gonna find your tables
That's
first.
good. I
Yeah,
need that.
yeah.
I was so stressed out when I couldn't get an unlimited table. I was like, oh fuck.
Mhm.
Like, am I not gonna have a con like after AX? And then I got standard and I'm like, okay, thank God. Since you are primarily a print artist, but you also have like some keychains and an Ita bag, how do you try to stand out when Artist Alley is primarily prints?
I want to quote like I guess like give you a quote like from like this video that like I used to that I watched before that kind of changed my way of thinking. Basically, like this guy was saying that like nowadays, so he's also an artist, but he said that like nowadays for us, it is so hard to succeed if you are just one thing. It's very hard to make it if you are just an artist. I feel like now you have to find things that you are good at and then mix them all up together. And that's how you stand out. That kind of opened up my eyes because I started looking for like what are the things that actually like I'm good at and then taking all of those and then just mixing them all up. But like for me, when I went to like Anime NYC, I tried to look for things that's like, okay, which ones are the ones that caught my eye? And then I actually took notes like, oh, if I stop by a table, I was like, oh, why did I stop at this one? If I also like pass by a table, I also like, why did I pass by that one? So I started taking notes and stuff of like what caught my eye specifically. And I noticed the ones that like caught my eye are like, oh, very colorful, very graphic, and da 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 da. I was like, oh, okay, like these are the things that makes these people stand out from the others. And like, what do I like from that? I take it and then put it into my own thing. It's very important to recognize what you like and how to add it to your stuff to make it look different. In my case, I like doing vector works, which number one is not very common in Artist Alley. And number two, I like very, very colorful very, very colorful things. And number three, I also like graphic design. So I combine all those things. Typically is sometimes could be like be separated and I mix it with my illustrations. So now if you look at my stuff, they have a little bit like graphic design, they have illustrations, they have popping colors, and then after that they have like typography and all of that combined that makes me stand out from all the other artists.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up because we've talked about this, I remember, like at Fanime. Like, it's very easy to blend in Artist Alley because naturally there's a lot of like art styles that are very appealing for a lot of customers. So naturally, a lot of people are going to go into like a very specific art style. But then let's say if you want to go back to those art tables, it's kind of hard to differentiate
Hard to
between
find, yeah.
different artists. But I really like how you brought up that you combine like a lot of different like art styles and like things that you're good at because yeah, if I were to go past your table, I would know where to find you because your art style is very distinguishable like amongst artists, Sally. And like I think that's definitely like one example of how to stand out.
Another way of like looking at this is we are all artists, but I think the thing that makes us stand out from each other is how we are not an artist. So the way that I do that is like I am taking the non-artist part of me, which is like more like the graphic design or like the marketing one, by adding the non-artist things or like the non-art influences into your art or like how you run your brood, that helps a lot on how to separate also your table and your art and your brood from like everyone else. Because I apply a lot of like marketing tactics, let's say like yogurt packaging, right? How do we make our yogurt product look different from like everyone else's? So I don't know if you've seen a video where people do a packaging and then they would take a photo of like the products and the actual products on the shelf, and then you would Photoshop your product and then see how
Mm.
you compare to that and like do you stand out? And I feel like that marketing side, which is like the non-art side of me, is like taking over and like, okay, sometimes it's not just the art also. It's also like what you can apply from like outside materials that like help with that too.
Yeah, I like that you brought up the business marketing aspect because I don't think a lot of people consider that, which naturally they wouldn't because initially you are an artist when you start an artist alley, but as you take it more seriously, and I know for some people this might just be a hobby, but for a lot of us it is either like a part-time or actually like our full-time, you do have to consider the business aspect of it, or else you won't really stand out amongst all the competition, especially now that Artist Alley is very competitive, and I feel like the stakes are just much higher now that it's not a bad thing, but it's very accessible now in terms of all this information, and it's more professional than it used to be before, like, the pandemic, so to say. On the topic of proxies, so from my understanding, you hire proxies if you have like more than one con lined up in the same weekend. Can you briefly explain what a proxy is for those listening?
A proxy is basically, to make it very, very simple, is someone who goes out and sell your merchandise for you. They took over your, what do you call your booth, and then they sell for you for like the entire weekend, whether it be the entire weekend or like maybe just like a certain amount of days. But basically, someone who sells for you.
So from
Yeah.
last year, I think you said 43 cons, right? How many of those
Mhm.
cons of the 43 did you do yourself? And then how many were with proxies, if you remember?
Maybe around like 30 to 35. I did it all by myself just because, again, like it was my first year. Basically, almost every single one of these cons are new to me. So I usually like to test it out myself before sending someone there. The only ones that I would send a proxy to is like usually when it overlaps and I can't make it to like both of them.
So how did you find your proxies?
I think all of them actually are usually like friends of friends and word of mouth. I know that some people use their friends to help them out, and some people usually like from their social media, or like they're like, hey, I'm looking for a proxy to help me sell, or like they're like some proxy started out from fans of like these people's work. But yeah, like I for personal reasons. I weirdly don't really like using my friends because weirdly it's like mixing like friends with work is just kind of awkward for
Yeah.
me. So far it's been okay. Like I've had to use my friends like a few times where like I really couldn't find anyone and it's been okay. But even my friends told me that like, yeah, we don't mind helping you this because you're starting out, but like they don't really want this to be like an ongoing thing because it could get really awkward really fast, and when you mix like friendship with business, like even with family and everything, things could go wrong, especially when money and like work is involved.
I'm assuming, like, based on your answer, your proxies are, like, not, I guess, like, direct friends. Like, are they acquaintances, or, like, how did you
Yes.
find them?
So far, all of my proxies are actually friends of my friends. Yeah. So I did not know these people beforehand. I knew them from a friend. And then after that, they were like, hey, I'm interested. And then after that, I would talk to them. And if I like their vibe, which is something that's very important to me, then that's when I'm like, yeah. I personally sometimes have a hard time establishing boundaries. And I feel like that's very important. I feel like I need them to know that, like, yes, we are friends and we could be friends, but this is a professional relationship first, and then we can be friends. And that's with people that you just meet or like new people. It's a lot easier to do that because sometimes, like, even if it doesn't work out between you as friends, you could, as long as you have a good professional experience, I feel like that should still be okay. But I don't really want to risk my friendship with my friends when it's like our friendship is first and then the work, especially when they're doing a lot of this for favor.
I know you brought up that you have to have, like, or you're looking for, like, a specific vibe, but I guess, like, what are some characteristics you look for in a proxy?
Well, I guess number one, the first thing that I need to get from them is like I think I need to feel comfortable with them. I need to get the reassurance that they are good people because that's always very important. You don't want to hire someone that's gonna you think is gonna steal from you, you know?
Yeah.
I'm looking for someone with a particular like energy because if you look at my booth, it's very colorful. It kind of like wham, you know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like I feel like I need someone who's able to match that energy. Because before I had people, they're very good people, like I'm good friends with them, but they are not as outgoing as I would like them to be. And then I noticed that sometimes when you come to a table that's very colorful, you are expecting a certain level of energy. And when you are not met with that kind of energy, I feel like subconsciously there's like a level of like mismatch that makes you feel like there's something off here. It resulted in me not getting a lot of sales when I have people who's like, hey guys, like, yeah, come take a look, like, da 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 da, and like it matches like the colorful and like the energy and everything. I noticed that people are a lot more engaged. I wouldn't say that this tactic worked for everyone because some boots are a lot more subdued and like calm. And some, like going to like, I want to consider my booth is like going to a candy store, but some people's booth, it's like going to a coffee shop where you want two different things. It could work for some people where like you go to the table and it's like very calming and you're like, oh, I have the time to like look and everything. And like, you're like, yeah. But when you're at my table, I feel like you want to talk, you want to like, yeah, like I'm looking for this, like, this could be a good fit. Usually I just go based on that. And then the second one is just like how easy they are to work with. Unfortunately, like you usually would have to find that out like during or after the con. That one can sometimes be a little like hit or miss. I've had people who had really good energy, but I find a little bit hard to work with.
It's interesting that you brought energy up because that's definitely something I wouldn't have thought about. I think I would have gone with, oh yeah, they have to be upbeat, and I think that's also because that's what works with my booth, just as how you mentioned that it works with your booth. But I like how you also mentioned that it might not work with everyone because, like you said, with your shop being kind of like a candy shop and then other like artist booths could be more of like a coffee shop vibe. I think it would be a little bit jarring seeing someone who's like very upbeat, but then like their booth is like completely dark and like horror kind of theme.
And again, like I feel like this things like there's no one set rule, right? But I feel like this is what works for me. So yeah, because I noticed that like even me in general, like when I'm really tired and I'm just like I feel like I'm not making as much sales because I feel like people will go to my table and like even I'm not as responsive, like as upbeat, and like I can feel that difference.
I know you kind of talked about having a proxy. How does having a proxy work? You can kind of, I guess it is very long, but like you can lead me through the process of like beginning to end with how you send them inventory during con weekend and like how they send inventory and cash back to you at the end.
So I do have a few different proxies, and they're not in New York. They're usually in different states because for me that's kind of the whole point. So I would have someone in the Midwest, I would have someone here, I would have someone there. So that way, sometimes when it makes sense for them to go there, I just send it. I guess we can talk about like how I do my payment with my proxies. Um, there's two different ways of doing it. I just do it depend on the person, but generally the two ways that I'm doing it is number one is a flat rate. So a flat rate is basically you tell them like, hey, like for a 1 day event, you're gonna get this. For a 2 day event, you're gonna get this. For 3 day events, you're gonna get this. So that's a flat rate. And then the second one is actually per hour. So you just agree on a set amount that you're like, okay, like I'm gonna be paying you this much per hour. And then we usually see like how much the con hour is. So like let's say it's like 26 hours. I usually would also add another hour at the beginning and at the end for setup and takedown.
Mm.
And then after that, you guys can also agree on the bonuses. And the bonuses could also, which I'm also like doing different ways. Sometimes you can do it like by milestones. Oh, like if you make a certain amount of money every this, you get X amount. Or another one is like you can also like, oh, like some people likes to do sales percentage. So they're like, oh yeah, once you hit a certain number, you would get X% out of like this much. So like it really just depends. And I am currently doing like a mix of like those things just because I'm still trying to figure out based on like what we talked about. Like even though I have so many shows, most of them I do it myself. I'm still trying to figure out what is a fair pay for the proxies as well. I think one thing that I really wanna stress with, like at least with my proxies, I want it to be fair for both of us. I don't want it to be just fair just for me. I've seen so many people treat their proxies like not too well, and they would come in with like this mindset of like, oh, I'm paying you, so I can do whatever you want. If you don't like it, go somewhere else. I personally do not like those kind of treatment. I don't think people should be motivated by fear. I've also had horrible bosses, so I always want to make sure that I'm very open and transparent with my proxies. I get it that I'm paying you, but I never want this to be a one-sided conversation. So if you have something, please let me know. I think that's also like very important. And again, like with the pay and everything, you could always adjust based on your needs. So let's say we settle on like this amount, but then as the time goes on, we realize that like, oh yeah, like this amount doesn't make sense. You don't feel like you're trapped into that one. I feel like always be open to have conversation with your proxies because again, this is like a two-way relationship. The reason you also want to treat your proxy fairly is because if you don't, there's a higher chance that they might steal from you, and you definitely don't want that. So by keeping everything fair and open, like you mitigate those risks. So the way that I deal with my proxies is I usually like, because all of my proxies are out of town, I usually send them the stuff, the equipment and the stock to them. I want to say like this could be like a double-edged sword, just because again, sometimes I would have to send something to someone and it doesn't work out. It's a lot more complicated to get your stuff back. But at the same time, the pros is that like once you send them all their stuff, you don't have to pack for them. Meanwhile, if I have someone here, the pros would be I don't have to worry about not getting my stuff back. But the cons would be I would have to pack for them. If I'm starting out with them, I still have to send them like the starting kit and equipment. But for the stock itself, I only send like a little bit, probably just usually for what they would need for that con. If I have someone that I've been working it for a while, I usually just like to send them straight from either the manufacturer or like where I order like my stuff. So that way it saves me a lot of time and I don't have to pack too. And I know this because I know this person is gonna be going for me anyway, so there's no reason sending them a little bit extra for the peace of mind.
So if it's with like a standard proxy that you know you're going to be, I guess, like repeating, I don't know what the exact word is, but
Yeah,
if you're gonna have,
concurrent, I guess.
like a recurring proxy, do you just like give them like your display and then they keep it, or do they like send back the display?
So the display they keep, like with Artist Alley display and everything, they can get pretty expensive, right? When I have to send it to them in the first place, like that's already a lot of money being sent to them. But if we have to keep like sending back things, it's gonna basically double that thing. Sometimes the cost of sending those things back is gonna be like the same amount if I were to just like buy a whole new display. So I
Hmm.
tell them to keep it. Yeah, or unless like I want to try a new proxy, I would probably have them send it out to that new proxy. So at least I don't have to buy
Oh.
another one or like set up a new one.
So they have the display. Do they have like, I think you said they don't have like the exact quantities that you would usually bring for like a con, but like do they have your Ita bags, so to say?
So ETA bags, not yet. Just because I still haven't figured out a system for myself. I'm having a hard time bringing my own ETA bags. I'm probably gonna send a few to like the ones that's like that I'm using the most. But for the other ones that usually go for once every 3 months, I probably wouldn't. I would probably just give them a QR code with probably a discount code to say that like, hey, if you buy this, it's gonna get shipped to you for free. So that way they can still try to sell it, or maybe I'll give them a display for them, and a QR code. It's a hassle. And ETA bags are a lot, you know what I mean?
It's
Yeah.
already a lot for
So yeah.
ourselves.
Yep, exactly.
Because that's definitely something that I need to think about. Right now, I am trying my
Hmm.
best not to get double booked. And especially because starting this year, I'm mostly sticking to like major cons, and I don't think I'm ever going to be in a situation where I'm going to be double booked. But that is something I wanted to think about.
I also don't want to be double booked because the thing is like dealing with one con is hard enough. Imagine dealing with a bunch, right? If I have the choice, I wouldn't want to be double booked either, but sometimes I don't have a choice. Because if I don't do those cons, then I would have no income. I personally think you shouldn't limit yourself to like, oh, I don't want to double book. I feel like sometimes you just have to do it.
Plus, a lot of cons, if you don't do it that year, you won't get priority for the following year. So then you really have to do it.
Sometimes like they don't give us an options too because again like let's say for like the 4th of July weekend, most of the major cons are happening that weekend, and sometimes it's not an option to just like drop everything else.
So when you get into multiple events, what makes you decide to hire a proxy versus, or I think maybe you kind of answered this, but just in case, when you get into multiple events, what makes you decide to hire a proxy versus declining that event?
So thankfully I haven't had to decline an event because so far I've managed to figure it out. Where I would decide to send my proxies is there's usually 2 points. Number one, do they allow proxies or not? So sometimes when you get accepted to two cons, one of them would allow proxies, one of them usually don't. And if that's the case, it's a no-brainer. Like you kind of have to send your proxy to like the one that allows proxy. Number two, you decide like which con is kind of like more important. If I got into like a big con and a smaller con, I usually try to prioritize the big con and I would go there myself because not only for the money, but I like to represent myself more at a big event. It's still like sometimes like the smaller cons, like I still can't let it go because it's still like income. Third one is usually by distance. If two cons are comparable, I usually would just choose like whichever one's closest to each other because that would make sense. Because let's say if I have someone in the East Coast and someone in the West Coast, like, it doesn't make sense if I were to go West Coast and then would go
Yeah.
East Coast. It's like when it's slightly bigger, Like I would have like a small con here, but I would have a bigger one. Sometimes that's also like things that logistics, because like it doesn't make sense to like switch coast just to go to like the slightly bigger one. But unless it's something like AX where like I have to go, there's no way I'm sending a proxy to AX,
Yeah.
you know? Like I'm like, okay, then I'll have to go. Like I don't have a choice.
So do you have different expectations with how a con will go if you have a proxy versus if you were the one selling in person?
The expectations for myself, actually, depending on the cons, can go higher or lower. When I go to my own cons, I expect a certain amount of money, right? Like a certain amount like profit. That can go up and down based on how I do at a con. So sometimes like when it's a really good con, then I would actually raise that bar for myself because I'm like, oh, it's a good con. It's me. I can do better. But when it's a bad con, my bar is just like, okay, if I make this certain amount of money, which nowadays I have a threshold, like if I don't hit this number, then it's not worth like going. But when I'm sending a proxy, either usually I would think of a number that how much I would do, and I would give them like 80% of that. You know what they say, like no one will work as hard as you are at your own booth. So you can't expect them like the 100%. So I want to give them the 80%. It's either that or sometimes I would consider it as a proxy, they need to be able to do 3 times their expenses. Whenever we're sending out a proxy, I pay for everything. So on top of their pay, every single expenses is being paid for by me. So I'm footing all the bill. If I'm sending a proxy, I want them to at least be able to either double or triple the expenses. Because if you're sending someone and you're basically just making your money back, it's at that point there's no good reason to send someone out.
I usually say, oh yeah, marketing purposes, which is true. But I feel like if you're in a situation where this is our main source of income, it can't just be for marketing purposes. Like we need to make money at that
Yeah.
point.
How's your like experience with proxies?
I've only had one proxy, like with or you've met her, but
Oh.
she proxied
Yeah,
for
yeah,
me for
yeah.
626, but I only did that because I was in a
You
situation
already signed
where
up?
because I did AX and 626, which was like hell
Hmm.
because I was up till like 1 in the morning at one point, and then I had to wake up at 5
Hmm.
for AX the next day. So luckily I'm not doing that this year, but
Yeah.
now I know not to do a night market and a con, like a really big fucking con.
But like, yeah, I'm kind of curious too. Like, would you be comfortable like hiring friends and families as proxies?
I think right now I'm only in a situation where I can. I think eventually I would want to go the same route that you are going with like
Hmm.
friends of friends because then at
Yeah,
least your friend can vouch for them, but it's also not a stranger, which there's nothing wrong with hiring a stranger. I know of some like
yeah.
artist friends who do that. I think I'm just too paranoid to do something like that.
The reason why that's so important is like I think something that we haven't touched too is because like it's a lot of trust because they're handling your cash and your money. Like if you don't have anyone to vouch for it, like they could literally just run off your money and your merch and then that's it. Usually when you're doing a proxy, you're sending them somewhere, right? How are you gonna get it back? You know what I mean?
It's a lot of trust. And then they're also representing your brand too, because people who might not recognize you as the artist, they're going to recognize whoever is selling for you as the artist.
Again, like I said, like I'm footing all the expenses, but usually they would book all their own accommodations first. So like let's say like sometimes they would book their own flight first because just it's easier, you know, like their own like Ubers and everything. So like they usually just give me the receipt and after that we usually go through the cash that they have and then we would just like, put it against the expenses and then see how much they make or owe. So usually like we have leftover cash, they usually either would Venmo me back or if it's someone reoccurring, I would tell them to just keep the money and then that's our cash box for next time. So like that's next time, like if I have to pay them, but we didn't make enough cash that week, then okay, just take it from the cash box. And so far I really like it. Before that, I usually just have them like Venmo me back or I would just Venmo them the difference if I still owe them money. So but it's actually like
Oh.
very simple.
Yeah, see, just based on that, like it requires a lot of trust, especially with just cash.
Yeah. But you also have to like go through like a lot. Like I had to go through like a lot of trial with like different people. My first proxy was amazing. She was amazing. And she gave me like this false expectations of like what it's like working with proxies. So like after I worked with her and like I had to work with like other people, I came back to her and I was just like, "You did this. You made me think that working with proxies are easy. You made it too easy. And now I'm struggling with other people. You need to take accountability." Sometimes I would send her to like a con and I completely forgot that I sent her there. And then she's like, "Oh yeah, I'm done." I'm like, "Oh wow, like I completely forgot that like you're there. No hassle, no drama. It's just like yeah." And I'm like, "Okay." Like and I would always like give her bonus because I'm like, "Okay, you did well. Like here you go."
So since you brought up that, at least like with her, because she was such a good proxy, you didn't even know that she, or I guess you forgot that she was vending at a con. I guess like in the beginning, like how much communication do you expect from a proxy? Like do you expect communication per day of like, oh, this is how much we made per day, or do you just expect it like at the end of the con weekend?
At the beginning, I usually like to do a lot of communications beforehand, usually just because of logistics, right? Because like we have to the flight and everything, the setup and everything. But usually I go radio silent on the weekend unless they're looking for me. Just because again, usually whenever I'm sending someone to, a proxy, I'm usually at a con myself. I usually would just ask like, how much do you think we made today? That's it. And after that, we would have like a talk like a 2 days after the con. Usually on a Tuesday or Wednesday, just because like usually we were both like wiped out from the con, and it's not like I need the money. Like, hey, where's the money? Like, I trust my proxy, so I'm
Yeah.
like, yeah, like let's recover, and then we can talk about like what's happening at the con and everything. So I do a lot of communication before and after, but not during the con.
No, I bet. It's like they're messaging you like, what the fuck do I do? Like, I am literally in the middle of a
I
transaction right now.
Yeah, my proxy like when we first started, like they literally texted me about like every single thing. Like, hey, getting on the lift now. And I was just like,
Why?
yeah, I know. Like I was like, yeah, no, like legit. Like they're like, hey, like getting on the lift, like, hey, like oh, I'm here. Yeah, no, it's okay.
Honestly, I
Like
feel like that's something
like
I would do though.
I know, and that's what I'm saying. Like again, it also works. It like again, it just depends on the person. But like for me, it's like we're adults. Like I'm not gonna like, where are you? Like obviously, if something's going on, like please let me know. But like I don't like micromanaging people. And again, this is because like I've had my own bosses before. I hate being micromanaged. Like I'm an adult. As long as you get your job done, I don't care. Like because I feel like some people are also like very strict with their proxies. They're like they expect their proxies to like stay here, that's it. I'm like, okay, like if you wanna walk around, feel free. Like if there's something that you wanna see, you wanna shop, do it. Like that's completely fine. You're not my slave. I don't own you. But what I'm saying is like I'm very lenient with my proxies, but once people start taking advantage of it, that's when I become strict because I'm like, okay, like you have shown that you cannot be trusted with us, and then so now I expect like updates. But before, like I'm like, okay, just let me know how the con went, like this and that, this and that. I've had to do it before, just because I thought like this person was doing well, but like because I was still like trying them out. I had my friend stop by my table. And like, hey, like, how's this doing? And they're like, oh yeah, not so good. Like this, and this. And that's when I'm like, okay, like you kind of lost my trust. But like for everyone else, like when they're like, oh yeah, like I've had other people like stop by my table too, and like, oh, your proxy was lovely. They did this, that, 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 and I'm like, okay, then do whatever you want, you know?
That's actually a good way. I didn't think to have like other artist friends like just come by your table when there's a proxy. Not really as a test, but as a test in a
It's
way.
not even, it's not like we're setting them up to fail. You know what I mean? It's not like I'm like setting my proxies up to like a standard that like you need to like bow down to people and whatever. You know what I mean? But it's, yeah, but it's just like whenever someone who stopped by at my table and they have a pleasant experience, as long as they're like, oh yeah, I thought it was pretty good, then that's good enough for me. Like you need to like
With like a
yeah.
camera. Like you have to set this camera up so I can
Yeah,
see you.
yeah.
No.
So I can see you. You get like exactly three pee breaks and like they're 3 minutes each.
It's like I don't see you on the ring camera. Why are you not on the ring camera?
Yeah, yeah. You're like, oh, you're past your pee time. Come back now. It's $1 every minute off your paycheck. No, it's a front. It's a candy store, but it's like they're chained to their tables. They're
There's
like,
like a chain
please
on the
buy
bottom.
something.
Behind like the ring camera like angle. Help me.
Yeah. Like blink, blink.
Blink
Uh,
twice if you need
oh
help.
my God.
So what advice would you give to someone who wants to start an artist alley?
I think just start. Just start. Again, I started 2 weeks, no, a month after like my first con, and you kind of just have to like jump to it. A lot of people are being held back by their own like perfectionism, but I think it's because I went in so blind then I was just like, okay, what's the worst that's gonna happen?
Yeah, I feel like now it is a little bit more intimidating because, especially since there was an uprise in Artist Alley artists like ever since 2020, that I feel like a lot of booths have become so much more professional looking that it can be very intimidating. I feel like I would be intimidated if I started this year, versus like early 2022. But yeah, just starting is really the best way.
We all gotta start somewhere. So I feel like, yes, I personally don't feel intimidated when I see big boots like that. It motivates me because I look at that and I was like, oh, that could be me. But I think you gotta start somewhere. Let's say you start doing Artist Alley, your first Artist Alley, and then you lost like a few $100. You spend that money to get an experience. It's not like you're being robbed or anything. Yes, you might not make your money back, but you definitely have gotten a valuable experience. So like think of it, it's like the cost for that. It's like traveling.
And I feel like in the beginning, it should be expected for you to not make a lot of money. Like, it'd be nice to break even, but don't be surprised if you're at a loss because you're just starting out and you don't know what you're doing yet.
My first con, right? Like I had to buy everything and I'm also flying out of state. I was kind of lucky because I profited like $150 after like what do you call it, like expenses and everything. I got pretty lucky because a lot of people did not break even on the first one. But at the same time, I went in there with the mindset of like losing money. I think I'm probably gonna lose like $500 $600, but I'm learning something.
So, moving on to our little speed round, do you prefer first come, first serve, lottery, or juried apps, and why?
I don't know. I think I kind of like jury and lottery. First come first serve only. Nah, I don't like first come first serve. First come first serve is, I think, is the worst way of doing it, especially when you're a big con. Because you know how it is, especially like you've done AX a couple of times, right? The artists definitely are not happy with it because there's so many competitions. I'm pretty sure the juries are also not like, like the cons are not happy with it because people are just putting in anything they can. That means there's gonna be so much misinformation, wrong context, everything, and then people are gonna have to like email them and everything. So I don't know why that still exists. For me, jury and lottery is, I think, is the best one. Jury is a little bit like biased, so it could be a little bit harder to get in. Like I feel like everything in this life is kind of juried, so like we're a little bit more used to it. And I feel like that one you can kind of take control of your fate a little bit more. But with Lotto, Lotto is fair. Like it's like there's nothing you can complain about it. You're good, you're bad, you get in. That's it. So like I think those two are like my favorite.
First come, first serve used to be my favorite, but that's because I would get into the cons and I
Yeah,
would do first come, first serve. But then with Otakon and I didn't get in an unlimited table, I was like,
and
F
and
first come,
and
first serve.
yeah, and then you feel it, right? And then you feel the pain, and that's why it's like if you're not at your computer at that exact moment, then you that's it. I think jury lotto is also one a good one. So like they jury you first, and then from the pool people that they juried, the one that went through, they lotto that.
I've seen a lot of cons go in that direction now with combining like two out of the three options. I think lottery just stresses me out, which is nice because you can just apply and not worry about like
Yeah,
getting in first. But then it stresses me out because you don't know if you'll get in the following year versus like the next year. But then I guess that means like you just have to apply for more cons in that way.
yeah, and that's the thing, and the stress that comes with this kind of line of work. And again, like I think you just have to learn to like tell yourself like you win some, you lose some. With cons, you can't say that like, oh, I want this con, this con, this con. It doesn't work that way. So that's why you have to learn to like accept it, because if not, your life is just gonna be filled with like anxiety.
So when it comes to artist value, what do you invest in and what are you cheap about?
Investing display number one is like it makes sense. Display is the first thing that people see. So like if you have a good display, I feel like people are more interested in buying your merch. The second one is merch. I know a lot of people like cut corners, especially on prints. Like the margin is so good, but I don't mind paying more if I can sell it confidently. Especially as print artists, you would have those like
Yeah.
magazine paper. Yeah, if you go to Artist Alley, you know what I'm talking about. I've heard this argument from people where they say that like, oh, people come to you for the art. I'm like, yes, but like I feel like I am blessed enough to be able to do this as my full-time job. I don't like screwing over the people that helps my business. If I can't, like I need it to be the best quality. And again, like I want to sell the things that I would buy, and I would not buy those magazine papers, so I would not sell those things that I would not spend money on, and I feel like you would disagree with this, is that I refuse to spend money on packaging
No, I
because
don't like spending money on packaging, please. I hate it.
okay. um,
Waste of, I mean, it's not a waste of money, but it
yeah.
feels like a waste of money.
Here's the thing. Number one, I feel incredibly guilty with like the amount of waste, especially in Artist Alley, that like we as an artist create. You know, with like the plastic sleeves and everything. At this point, it's almost like a necessity because I also don't. I can't hand out people with like just like a piece of paper, right? So like they kind of have to, but at the same time, like I also can't use like the recyclable ones because a lot of my customers actually came because they saw other people holding my prints. So like by covering that, it's like cutting my own marketing. But what I kind of refuse to do is like, because I sell keychains, but I don't like to repackage those. So I actually use the packaging that I got from my manufacturers because number one, it saves time. Number two, it saves money. I agree that like making backing cards and everything is like make your branding stronger, and I completely agree with that 100%. But at the same time, like I'm just thinking about like the amount of work that I have to do. I see your videos just like doing the pins and then putting it in the back, and I'm
Okay,
like I
but I
could
only do
never.
that for pins
Yeah.
though. I do the
Yeah,
same
yeah,
thing
yeah.
with you with keychains. I just like leave it on there and then just
Yeah, yeah,
print
yeah.
out like a thermal label printer.
Again, like I'm not saying that like people who do this are wrong. It's just I personally can't do it. Even though like every time I see your stuff, like I'm just like I don't want to throw your backing cards away because it's so good. So like
I know.
yeah.
I
So
kind of reduced the quality of my backing cards to be honest. Like they're still nice, but they're not
yeah.
as thick as they used to be because it's like it's
Eh, eh.
another expense.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what I'm saying. Like at a certain point, I feel like those things also adds up. Another thing that I'm also like refusing to spend money on is like business cards. I still have business cards, but I don't hand them out anymore. I only give them out with purchase, but whenever people stop by my table, I give them QR code. Because again, number one, it's like less waste, and then number two, it's easier for people to find me. Because what I learned before when I was handing out business cards is that like I would hand out 150 business cards at a convention, and I would get less than 10 followers because people don't have time to like write it down and da, 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 da. But like when they scan their QR code, it can take them there right away. And even if there's no signal, they can take a photo of it and they can just go back to it and still click on the QR code.
Yeah, I remember when I helped you for like a little bit at ANYC. I liked how you did that with when people do ask for a business card, you just have them like take a photo or like scan the QR code because then you save so much more money and it's not like you don't have business cards, so you can at least include that with purchases.
For me too, the waste is like a big thing, and that's why like I'm trying to mitigate like as much waste that I can like at my table, which unfortunately like I still use a lot of plastic. There's only so much you can do, so like I'm trying to mitigate it wherever I can or like I have the power to.
I like that you brought up, especially for your prints, that you do need plastic, at least for marketing purposes, because that's how I find a lot of artists. Like, let's say I'm not really the type to list, like, oh, these are the artists I want to see at this convention. I'm just like, I'm going to go there and I'll find out, like, who I see. And I think a lot of, like, the art prints that I have purchased, or even, like, keychains and whatnot, it's because I was able to see that someone else bought it and they were walking around. And it's like, oh, where did you get that from?
I want to say like 15% of my customers came because they're like, I saw that print and like I asked the person. So I get a lot of like word of mouth marketing, especially like I remember like last year Otakon, like it was crazy. Like how many people they were like, oh yeah, I saw that print. Someone's carrying it. And I was like, where is it?
It's like it's definitely, and I think when you brought up that you just kind of have to like pick and choose like your battles in a way where okay, you'll try to
Yeah.
save, I guess, the environment or like even money in certain aspects, like with your keychains, but
Yeah.
then it's like
Yeah.
gotta contribute somehow to
Yeah,
the
I know.
climate change,
I
I guess.
know. I know. It's tough. It's tough.
So, what's your controversial artist alley opinion, if you have one?
But I think that like these people need like a lot of these artists like need to get alive. But like what I'm saying is like I think need to get alive in a way that's like I've seen people whose entire personality is just artist alley and they have nothing going on outside of it. Like every single facet of their life is just this. This is my income too. And I can see how easily you can get sucked up into it. Especially like last year when I did like 43 shows. But I'm still trying to balance out that like this is my second year and I am so burnt out. I can see how like how doing artist alley or just having artist alley as like your entire life can make you like a worse person because your whole life is just rotated around it. And there is so much more to life other than Artist Alley making like your business and everything. This is gonna sound bad, but like I at Artist Alleys, I don't really try to make friends. Like I'll if I really like someone's work, like let's say I like yours, like I would come up to you and talk to you. But I don't go out of my way to like, oh, I need friends. When I first started doing Artist Alley, I did not know a single person. I just go there, I make a trip out of it. So I don't just come, like, I don't do an in and out operation. Like, I stay for like a few days and travel thing. Because I told myself, like, yeah, this Artist Alley is a means to fund my life. I don't live for Artist Alley. I've seen like so many like people where I'm just like, yeah,
No,
yeah, you need to, yeah. Yeah, I was like, yeah, can you like go get like another personality?
as much as I love Artist Alley, I do agree that if as long especially if you consider that if you treat Artist Alley like a job, you don't want your entire life to revolve around your job. And it's like that saying where it's like, oh yeah, we're all family. Yes, but also no. It's like you don't want your entire life to revolve around Artist Alley because especially how it changes so often, like we talked about how you might not get into certain cons, you don't want that to just like break you because you were so expecting of that. But then if you have another life outside of Artist Alley,
Yeah, that's why it's good because like that this year I didn't get into Otakon and I thought I was gonna be devastated, but weirdly enough I wasn't. I think it's because this year because I'm so burnt out from like last year, second year burnout. But like I think I realized that like once I did not get into Otakon, I was actually relieved. And I'm like, oh wow, like now I have time to enjoy my life with like the business that I built up. And then yeah, that one and then like I think the second opinion is just like I think some of these people are like way too cheap. Like I'm like oof. Which is why I never share lodging with people like unless I really know them. Because I don't know, like I've heard so many like horror stories about like people trying to save money by like staying with other artists, but like end up being in like dramas because they're like, ah, you owe me $2, and I'm like,
as a paranoia thing, I don't like to share lodging unless like I really know someone. It's because like I know a lot of people also value their privacy and like for a lot of other reasons. Yeah, I don't want to get involved with that drama.
I've only started like sharing with people like after a year of like doing Artist Alley because at that point I've known these people and I'm like, okay, I can share with this and that. But like even I have my boundaries. I'm like
So are you team fanny pack or money box?
all the way fanny pack. I'm team minus money box. Do not ever get a money
Take
box.
it out.
Yeah, never. Don't even have it on your as your option. Might as well put a target on it. I told my friends like who's helping or whatever. I was like, this is like the number one thing. Don't ever let it out of your sight, and it has to be on a person. When I first started doing this, like I saw someone they were using like a money box, or not even money box. They were using a wallet, and their stuff got stolen. So they were in a corner. They were in a corner booth, and they had their wallet on the corner side, and it's a wallet. It's not a fanny pack, and like it was stolen. And like it was like that. I think that seeing that so early, like and they told me that like, oh yeah, they lost like 3 or 4K in cash. I was like, that really
Why is
opened
it
my
all in one
eyes.
place?
That's what I'm saying. Like it really opened my eyes like early. They're like, no, like this is like a thing. Even fanny packs, I don't even put him at the front. I put him at the back pocket. So like you would have to turn my fanny pack and everything. It's basically like you would not be able to get it unless you're like groping me. And, yeah. I've also heard like stories like money box. Like yeah, it's so easy. Like if they see you, they can like beat you up. They can get you, or like they can just snatch it. It's so easy. Do not ever get a money box at all. Like I'm like yeah, not at all.
And it's funny because a lot of them, I guess, not to whoever has on money box, that's on you. But like, it's also big. I'm like, how do you, unless you have like a large backpack, how do you hide that? Like,
That's what I'm
it's
saying.
really difficult
If
to
if
do
you,
that.
if you're going out, right, like at cons, usually, especially like when you're done at a con, you're so wiped out. Like I heard that like a lot of people even told me that like you should take off your badges after a con because sometimes people see artists and that means they know that like you have money when they see that you're an artist. I'm not paranoid about these things, but I'm like, oh, that is so right. That's something that you never even think about. And especially they see you're an artist, you have a money box. I feel like unless you're like a 6 foot, like 6'2", like white dude or whatever,
Like,
like I don't think we're safe. You never wanna or like yeah. Yeah. Like with a fanny pack, You can stash it away. You can even hide it under your shirt and everything. No money box. Period.
So, what has been your biggest money mistake with your business and why?
I think my biggest money mistake is not planning accordingly. Before this thing started, I told Macy that I hate planning so much. I would rather not do things than actually have to plan for it. But sadly enough, this job revolves basically around planning. I would be like, oh, I have a con this weekend. Let me book my ticket now. Like I've done that multiple
Wait, this
times.
weekend?
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
I have
oh my God,
yeah, like I've
scary.
had cons where like I have to fly out on Wednesday, Thursday, and I booked the ticket Sunday multiple times. Yeah,
Oh my God,
not
Gary, what the
yeah.
heck?
I know. Not including lodging or anything. That's where a lot of my money went because it would like a flight that could have cost like $200 usually end up costing 500. For merch and everything, I wouldn't say it's a mistake because I still think that they're like a learning process, and I haven't had anything where it was just so completely dead that I can't sell it. And even if I do have those, it's not that much of a mistake to the point that I was like I probably spent like $100 $200 on it and like I can't sell it anymore, but like I've made more than to cover like that cost anyway.
That's a
it's
lot
it's
of
it's
guts. What the
it's
heck?
bad. Like I'm not yeah, I'm not kidding. Like it is bad. Like especially when I'm burnt out like this. Like yeah, like sending my stuff to my proxies. I could have saved like $50 if I were to just send it like last week, but because I send it like on Friday, they're like, oh yeah, it's like $50 more if you want to make it in time.
I see that though when being burnt out. Like, obviously, if you're not doing like 43 cons in a year, it's more probable to be on time. But then I think once you're in the midst of like, oh, you have like a few cons or events in a couple weeks, but then you have to start planning for like November, December's con. It's like, I don't want to think about that. So I kind of understand that.
Yeah, it really is crazy because I have a lot of cons where like I got accepted like 7 months ago. And I did not plan until 3 weeks before, which is this con, this con this week.
So, what's your biggest business insecurity?
Longevity. I don't know how long I can do this. I am very insecure of my social media as well. I'm very glad to get to the point where I am right now, and I have like around like 7K followers, which it's not insignificant. I have started like dedicating like pages to like my artist alley since maybe like the beginning of 2022. So within like 2 years, I've gotten like 5K followers, which is again, I'm very grateful for these people. I realize my social media game is so weak, especially whenever I watch Macy's videos. She's like the queen of social media, and it just made me feel like a
I'm just lucky I
peasant.
like it, to be honest.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think that's the biggest thing. My insecurity is like I hate social media. I hate it with a burning passion. But at this point, like it's not even an option. Whenever I do social media, it's like a trek for me. Like I'm like, oh my God, like I have to do this. I feel like I am an artist through and through. I just want to draw. But social media is just like, yeah. Give me your
Yeah,
wisdom, Macy.
as
Wait, give me your wisdom.
that's what the YouTube is for. No, but to be honest, like right now in Artist Alley, I mean, not to say that it affects getting into cons, because I don't think it is,
Yeah,
because I've seen a lot of cons who accept like certain artists during jury and like they don't have
yeah,
a following. But
yeah.
it helps a lot, and you kind of have to be present on social media to be
A-
in Artist
And
Alley
that's the
now.
thing. I'm not insecure about my acceptance rate. Like, cause again, like I said, like I acceptance wise, I'm doing pretty okay. But that's why I'm saying longevity. Because traveling 43 cons a year is so hard on you, physically, mentally, everything. And it's like again, like it could even like ruin your relationship and everything. And ideally, as I get older, I don't want to be traveling as much, like at least for work. I want to be able to like do like maybe like half and half, half online business, half this. But right now it's like 95% cons and 5% online. If I could like boost my social media, the pressure of getting into cons is so much less. Then it's like, oh, if I don't get in, I have no income. And I'm like, I'm like, maybe I should hire a social media manager.
You could. It's like I should just start like an Artist Alley, like what is it, like
You
those
should.
agencies.
Yeah, you should. You should.
Yeah, I would want to be at a point where I'm not reliant on conventions, because I think I only did this full time when I started doing conventions more frequently. But that's why, like, if I can't stop doing cons either, because a majority of my income does stem from cons, and I can't go to
Yeah.
Japan every year if I don't do
That's what I'm
cons.
saying. It's like, yeah, I think it's just like once we have that balance of like, again, like I said, like maybe like a 50-50, even like 7-30, like 70%. I feel like it would be amazing if I can do like 70% online and 30% cons. Because that way I can just focus on the ones that I actually want to go, not on the ones where I have to go. And my customers would also be getting 100% from me. Not like the half-ass, half dying, half melting Gary at my table, just like, oh, let me know if you need anything.
So when did you first feel successful with your business, and what does that word mean to you?
I feel like successful is different for everyone. I think the first time where I feel successful is when I managed to like at this one con where I made more than what I made in a month of my salary. Not to say that money is like the measure to everything, but obviously when you hit a certain number, you feel good about yourself and you're like, oh, this business is sustainable. The second one is I think it's just like it made me feel successful not because of like the money, but like seeing the sales. This many people want my stuff, and I feel like that's the validation that I've always been looking for. Where I'm like, oh, like I always tell myself that like my stuff is not good. I'm always like below someone comparing to my friends. I'm always like not as good as them. No one would buy my art. I could never make it work. But seeing like amount of people that wanted to buy my stuff or like selling other stuff just makes you feel that like, oh, I guess I'm not as bad as I thought I was. And like I actually do provide value to these people.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like that's also why I could never go like 100% online and then 0% cons, because I feel like, especially as artists, and I could say like maybe for a majority of artists, it's nice having that in-person validation because it's different when someone buys online. Not to make that like online sales feel less than like in-person sales, but seeing it like in real time, like, oh, like someone loves your work, and if they're gushing about it, like it makes you feel appreciated.
I also feel like it's not just like a part of it's also like I guess the ego, right? Like when people like our stuff. But I think a part of it is also nice that seeing that you are providing something that these people want. So it's like it's a two-way street. Like, oh, you love it, but I also love you. You know what I mean? Because I'm happy that you feel good because of this thing that I make.
So what business goals are you pursuing right now?
Yeah, I think it's like the one that we talked about. I think it's like trying to increase my social media engagement a little bit higher, just because that's where I feel like I'm lacking. Personally, at cons right now, I feel like I'm at a good point where I'm not rushing to get like new stuff out of the door. I think I have enough stuff, like enough fan base at cons to actually sustain me. But yeah, the social media one is like I gotta step it up. Like, come on, yeah.
This
It's
year.
yeah. Oh, a goal actually. I want to hit 10K, and I think it should be doable.
I think so too. So, are you working on any big projects or new products that you'd like to share?
I do actually. I am number one. I am working on desk mats, but my desk mat there's gonna be a twist on it, which is why I can't just draw it and make it. There's gonna be a twist on it, and I have to actually complete the work and then find a manufacturer and then see if they can actually make it. And then the second one, I kind of want to work on my second Ida bag.
Yay!
But
Very
yeah,
excited.
oh, but also just like a little plug right here. Here, this is my current Ida bag, and it has
So,
Macy's pin on it. Yeah, I think I need to see because I just reordered this for like the second batch. Depending on how well that sell, then I'll decide on that. Because I don't know if you can see it right now, but I live in a studio. Everything that you guys see here and everything that you guys buy at my table is here. So right
oh
now,
shoot! Oh wow!
yeah, I'm struggling a little bit because I'm outgrowing my studio, but it's New York. I can't afford to get a office. So everything is like being cramped. Like you can literally see it right behind me. And I think what I want to do, like, which is this is kind of crazy, is like I actually want to do like figures.
I
That
feel
one
like
is
your
gonna
art would
be,
really translate well as a figure.
and that's what I'm saying. But the thing is, like with figure, is gonna be a lot more complicated too because not only did I have to find a manufacturer, I have to find a 3D modeler, and I think that's gonna be the biggest challenge. I have an idea how I want to do it. Like I don't think it's gonna be done this year, but I'm hoping to get a Kickstarter, not Kickstarter, like just like do the work and then see if I can actually push it, do the thing next year.
Oh, I'm excited
Yeah,
to see how
I
this all
am
turns out.
too.
So this was so much fun, and I feel like I learned a lot in this conversation, even if we do kind of talk about it in person. So where can our audience find you? Yeah.
Down here. Down here, guys. Yeah, but it's basically gonna be at GerryDraws underscore, or if you want to check out my store, it's gonna be GerryDraws.com. But Macy will spell it out because apparently, according to Americans, my name is spelled weird and it's not how it's supposed to be spelled. So, yeah.
Well, thank you so much for joining us,
Yeah.
and thank
Thank
you
you.
to everyone who joined us as
Yeah,
well.
thank you so much, Macy. This is
Yeah.
really fun, and I'm like I can't believe we talked for 2 hours.
I know. I'm glad you were part of it. So I know I like
Yeah.
messaged you like a month ago, so I appreciate it.
You know I love like short notices.
I was like, I'm gonna make sure he's like prepped, and I'm like, during my
Yeah.
vacation, here's the notes of the questions.
Yeah, no, like this is amazing. And I'm like again, I always love your work. I'm like you are always an inspiration to me. And even before I knew Macy, I've already been following her for a while. I do a lot of like my stuff like based on like how she does it. So like she's, a very good inspiration to me. And I'm so glad that like we managed to talk and become friends because yeah, like again, you're one of the people that like I look up to when I started doing this. Yeah.
Oh, also, I realized I don't know when Anime Las Vegas was last year, but it's like a 1 year anniversary of us
Oh,
like meeting.
yes. I think it is this weekend. I think it's this weekend
Is it this
actually.
weekend?
It's
Oh
actually
my
yeah, it's
god.
gonna be our 1 year. Yeah. So yeah, we met in
Love that.
Vegas. Well, what happens in Vegas did not stay in Vegas. Thank you so much for having Macy here. Um,
Yeah, thank you for joining. It's like the ugly part. It's like, well, I'll see y'all in the next episode. Bye.